that impressive. But for every container, there is a Goldilocks size diameter opening that gives you that cool laminar looking flow while still going pretty high.
This summer, America's great melting pot moves to the grill. Because beef is what's for dinner. And dinner will always bring us together. No matter the distance, united, we steak. Beef, it's what's for dinner.
And you might think, well, why don't you just take a typical flask that works so well and just scale all the dimensions up? And we tried that on our first 5-foot scale test. And just as I feared, it went all confetti on us. And the problem is illustrated here. If you want to scale up and double all the dimensions of the block, you get this. It's perfect. All these dimensions increased exactly by a factor of 2. But wait a sec, the volume increased by a factor of 8. This is called the squared cube law, and its effects are everywhere in nature, such as putting a hard limit on just how big land animals can be, because how heavy you are is a function of your volume, but the strength of your muscles and bones is a function of their cross-sectional area. So since animals evolved to get heavier by the power of 3, but stronger by only the power of 2, at some point it's just too much. So on the next 5-foot test, we increased the top diameter by a mere 3.5 inches. But now the pendulum swung too far the other way because while the column looked smooth, it didn't really go that high. And so finally for the third test, we let the pendulum swing back just a tad and shave down that diameter by just over an inch to try and dial in that Goldilocks outlet size. And sure enough, the column went really high and looked great. But this test uncovered another issue. With such a high volume of foam, the pressure was creating some really high forces in the flask. I mean, that's a lot of damage, which quite frankly left us with only one option. And so with the power of flex tape, we scaled things up even further to a 10-foot test and did our best to interpolate that Goldilocks outlet size.
You know how these things start. You hear the buzz about Wendy's life-changing breakfast. Pan-cracked eggs, oven-baked bacon. So you try the Breakfast Baconator, love it, and have to tell your friend. They try it, can't believe it, and have to tell their friend. And so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. And so on to Wendy's, where you can buy any of these and get another for just $1. We got you.
So once again, the outlet size worked great, but our joint construction wasn't prepared for the further scaled up forces. In fact, score a fat W for the flex tape, where you could see it single-handedly held the thing together, even as the screws and wood busted through. And we were realizing we just had to make the structure so over-engineered and indestructible, so the only option for the foam to escape the high pressure would be going out the top. And so while that wasn't a perfect result, I felt like we'd learned enough from all of our failures to design it strong enough for the final 20-foot world record version. In the end, we ran over 150 tests, not only to determine the right scaled up flask dimensions, but things like, does neck length have an effect? What happens if you vary the soap amounts? What effect do different brands of food coloring have? All of these tests were really insightful, but perhaps the most interesting finding was stumbling upon something I've affectionately named Devil's Toothpaste. Now you might be thinking, Devil's Toothpaste? That seems a bit extreme, Mark, but allow me to demonstrate. This is a shoebox full of the standard formula of hydrogen peroxide, sodium iodide, and soap that pretty much everyone uses to make elephant toothpaste. Now here's the same volume of reactants, only this time using Devil's Toothpaste. Now see if you can spot the difference in real time. Not only is it hyper-reactive, but the reaction is much hotter, so you get these really cool bubble formations. Here's one more. Once again, this is normal elephant's toothpaste in an Erlenmeyer flask. No big deal, people have been doing this for years. But once again, here's the same volume of reactants, now only with devil's toothpaste. Given how explosive this is, this may be irresponsible of me, but while we watch the replay, I'll tell you exactly how to make it. You start with 2016. Once that mixes, you're gonna Oprah Winfrey. A torch on the leftover rabbit fur, and you're good to go. And so by taking some rigorous safety precautions, we also intended to set the first and therefore only world record for the world's largest devil's toothpaste experiment by filling 6 55-gallon drums with 400 times the amount that broke the flask here. And so after 150 tests and 8 months of work, feeling much more confident about our build plans and chemistry, we packed everything up and made our way to the small farming town of Gridley, California. We chose Gridley because our family friend Dale graciously agreed to let us use his land, which is full of hundreds of acres of walnut trees. No, don't even think about it, Fat Gus. He also had a great backyard we could make use of. And so with only 4 days left till Fletcher was flying out for the party, we got to work on a 20-second build montage. And it took 4 consecutive 14-hour back-breaking days of labor in the hot sun, because with so much time to plan the most epic birthday party ever, I just kept adding more and more ideas to the list we would need to pull off. So in addition to building the indestructible 20-foot flask and the devil's toothpaste dumping mechanism, we also needed to make a methane bubble fountain, a 3D bubble printer, a fire tornado, a slip and slide into a pool, and an epic bubble pit. And even though I brought my buddy,